Hello, comics fans. I am Bobby Smith, and this is another very special episode of Comic Book Corner that we call the Questions Sessions. Today, I am very proud to introduce. I am very proud, guys, to introduce someone that I must refer to as a force of nature in the comic book industry. This guy has put the finishes on countless titles at Marvel Comics with his inks, launched his own imprint, and created his own characters alongside Joe Quesada at Event Comics. Worked again with Joe back at Marvel on little something called Marvel Knights in the late 90s that would reshape the company forever, setting them on their path to their current success. At DC, this guy has written some of their absolute best and most readable books over the past decade or so. And for me, finally, and maybe most importantly, he's a comics entrepreneur at his company, Paper Films, with his wife, the equally amazing Amanda Connor. Of course, I could only be speaking about the one and only Jimmy Palmiotti. And it is my immense pleasure to have you here today as my guest on a special Comic Book Corner questions session.
Well, this is me blushing.
And, that's my job.
Thank you for the intro. I think we should just end it here because it sounds really good, and there's no chaos in between.
There we go. Support the Kickstarter. Bye.
Right. The highlights are always the easy part. You know, It's everything else that I got to sit with. But
right.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here, Bob.
Thank you, man. Thank you. Like I said, I know it was weird, not in any way bad, but a little weird getting connected with me. But I'm a weird dude, so it's gonna be weird when you connect with me.
There hasn't been anything weird, so I don't even know what you're talking about. We both have the same COVID haircut. You know, it's kind of, which means no haircut. By the way.
It means hidden.
My wife keeps going, "You want me to do that?" And I'm like, I'd rather it go a little wild for a while until my haircut gets back to her job, you know?
Yeah. I want somebody to force me to cut my hair is really what I'm waiting on. Is like a situation to pop up in which I'm forced to go back in public, which I really am not looking forward to. Yeah. And them saying, you can't come in here looking like a Yeti, you know? And
well, we you know, it's funny because last week we went to the aquarium, which like in Florida, and they had it so you had to call in advance. They only sell a certain amount of tickets. You have to wear a mask.
Right. And
then they have spots you can stand. And the aquarium is pretty gigantic in Tampa. It's a pretty big aquarium. There was only 60 people in the whole building.
Oh, right.
You know? So I was like, okay, you know, I kind of feel safe.
Yeah.
Nobody's breathing on me. Nobody's coughing. Everybody's masked.
Yeah.
But that's the reality. You know, that's the most I've gotten out, you know, other than going to get groceries. And I had to go get some root canals done and some medical stuff done, and that was interesting because they had to give you a COVID test before. Right. So that day I didn't have any COVID-19, right? Because the next day it's like, okay. But you know, it's this stuff will cool down. Yeah. It'll calm down like everything else. You know, I tend to, if you watch. I think a lot of people are watching the news like they're watching like something happening live. Like it's just there's nothing going on, so they're watching it and it's messing with their heads even more.
I agree.
We're noticing the government even more where we didn't really notice it before, and
maybe that's not a bad thing.
No, it's actually a good thing. It's we definitely need the police everybody right now.
Yeah, we need involvement. We definitely need involvement. And
my hair is so messy back here. Look at this. It's like
oh, well, before we got on, what I did was I went to the bathroom and I put water on my hair, and then I put this nice little 1930s driving cap on. All done.
Yeah, you know, I was outside moving some plants around, and so I was like, it's almost time to go. So I just ran in, and that's why I look like a wreck. But, dude, I'm happy to be here.
Well, I totally really appreciate it because the thing is I have currently been supporting the book Pop Kill from Paper Films.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you guys. And the Kickstarter for the second issue is live right now. And you guys are wrapping it up over the next several days, right?
Has a couple of days left. I think we're close to hitting
50,000.
50,000, which is, we're going to add a digital graphic novel, probably a Trailblazer.
Awesome.
Which is one of my older ones I did for Image.
Right on.
But it'll be, everybody will get it. And we added a couple of things already. There's a sketchbook inside the book of Dave, so we're making Dave draw right now. Yeah, we got a week left. I mean, you know, I had hopes. You know, I had a really high stretch goal that if we hit it, you'd get the 3rd issue.
Oh yeah.
But I think we're talking about doing the next Kickstarter for issue 3 and 4 together. So you can buy issue 3 and 4 together.
Well, I mean, honestly, part of today's interview is slightly selfish because I am supporting the book. I do want you guys, you know, to see 30,000 appear in the next 5 days.
Yeah, it would be nice.
I want issue 3, man. And so, you know, I'll support the next one.
It would be, nothing would make me happier. It's actually all drawn, and it's being lettered and colored. And by the time we solicit 3 and 4, though, I think we'll do them together, and then we'll have make some creative things. But you know, we still have some good pledge things left, and people who didn't get the first one, they can go and buy issue 1 and 2. You know, they're separate comics. They're high grade. I'm like a stickler for textures and colors and papers. So the book is probably an example of me being completely obsessive with paper quality and printing. Yeah, and it's spot varnish and the blacks. I don't want to see the blacks come through the back of the page. You know, I'm like crazy. And sometimes it's a little too much, but
I want to tell the viewers right now, objectively, that what you're saying is something that I had written into the show for us to cover because of the fact that it's clear that there is a commitment to quality on the books that you guys are putting out. Like you said, everything from when you hold it, there's actually weight of a book in your hand.
Yeah, it's not like the $4.99 or $5.99 Marvel and DC comic where you can kind of like actually like smoke would fight against it if you waved it around, you know?
Absolutely. It's true. And then the thing is that we've moved to this time where, you know, I'm 51. I know you are in my age range.
I'm 59.
Okay. We were buying comics when we could flip a coin for them, you know?
It's true. I mean, the coins were, you know, worth more. But yeah, definitely. There was definitely a time you could buy 4 comics for $1.
Totally. And so, you know, as comic prices have gone up, I've stuck with it. There's been times where for this reason or that reason, I've had to bow out for a month or 2 or a year, even at a time. But with comics being more expensive, it's weird. I've changed my habits as a 50-year-old. And now I'm more likely to spend $20, $30, $40, $50 supporting a worthwhile creator on Kickstarter for a good quality book and knowing that I'm helping them move the ball down the field than I am just to go drop $3 or $4, like you said, on a book from Marvel or DC that, number one, may not be as high quality in its production and also may not have as much, for me anyway, and I'm not crashing on them because I still love those guys.
Right.
But as much ongoing substance. I feel like I'm getting more out of the story, something for real when I buy a lot of the more indie stuff.
Yeah, I think when you get older, you switch from Ford Escort to BMW. And, you know, and you start, you like, if you're like me, and I think you are, it's like, you don't buy everything that comes out. No, and you start looking at the inside of the book. You start taking, it's like, great cover. Let me look. Oh my God, the inside looks like crap. Nope. And I don't care if I miss an issue or 3 until I find some good art. I'm not going to buy it. And I've become a lot pickier because I also don't buy crossovers because I don't like them, and I don't like being forced to buy 300 books to get a story that honestly could have been told in 5 issues. So. I kind of take a break from them, and I definitely do support a lot of indie stuff. I buy a lot of European stuff. It's not the price for me; it's the quality of what I'm getting. So 100%. I tend to be a lot pickier, and part of that comes in my production of my books because I'm asking somebody to pay $20 for a book that I printed 1,000 of, and you know, I don't have a 20-page count in my book. It's 34 story. It's not 20. So it's an issue and a half, like say. And then I want to throw extra stuff too. Yeah, and I want extras in it. I want you to sit there and go, okay, this feels like $20 well spent. Plus I sign them all. So it's like an autograph on it. And we give a certificate. There's a little certificate of authenticity that comes with it in the back. And it has a hologram on it. And it's actually scannable. So I actually know you have that book. Which is kind of cool.
Right on, man.
But so it's these little things, and I feel like if I'm if I feel like some of the Kickstarters I get, I'm not going to pick on many of them, but some of them I get, it feels like a flimsy, like almost like what they used to give away on Free Comic Book Day. You know, it feels like a 10-page or 12-page nothing. And then the worst is sometimes I pick up some of the new books and they'll have like I know it's them being creative, but I don't want 3 blank pages in between each chapter. And I don't want 4-page chapter headings. I want either give me a 25-page book. Don't try to con me on stuff. And
that feels this thick, and then you flip through it and you're like, but
yeah.
But.
I mean, like I said, I'm comic people are not rich. You know that already. We have to hustle constantly. There's no guarantee. I don't have much work right now, and I'm somebody that's supposed to be able to get work, no problem.
Force of nature.
Right. So, I make my own work though. I don't wait for the companies because
that's really, honestly, and that's why I said that to me, that's that finally and most important, because that means the world to someone like me and to people out there, because you don't wait. You're like, I'm making it. Art is art.
No, there's a swap that you do. You kind of like say, I work for DC or Marvel or these companies on their characters, and I have to tell the stories they want me to tell. So I have to pitch them all the time. And it comes back and you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. I mean, even with our Black Label, Harley, and the Birds of Prey, we've had to change stuff in the first 2 issues already. We had to, like, Amanda had to throw some pages out the window because they said, you've gone too far, you can't show that. So that gets frustrating after a while, and it's definitely affected Amanda. Amanda's like, after this book, she wants to kind of dig in and do her own thing, because she's like, you know what, I can't with these little handcuffs that they create. And look, I've worked for Marvel and DC for years. I love them. They've allowed me to do some great work and backed me with stuff, and I still have their backs as well. But I need to get my own stuff out there, and I don't want to be the guy that's remembered for issue number 24 to 38 of a series. I'd rather have my own stuff come out, and of course you don't control what you're remembered for, but I feel like I've done enough. 14 Kickstarters. I've done 3 companies. Black Bull was another one I created with Garib at Wizard. Like, I feel like I'm still experimenting, and it keeps this business fresh in my head. Like, it keeps it. Everything feels still brand new to me, even though I've been doing it for since '91. Since '91 professionally, right? So it's important to challenge yourself in anything you do, I guess.
100%. Do you remember? It's weird because it's a good segue. Like, when you start talking about like you've been in the business since '91. Do you actually remember? I'm going to take a weird jump back in time for you.
Sure.
Do you remember the first comic book that you ever read? I mean, it may not be the first one that you read, but do you remember what is the first one that you actually remember?
It was probably an Archie comic, because they were in the barbershops when I was a kid. And I definitely I read Archie's, but then when I found Superman Fantastic Four, I was like, okay,
something different.
That's speaking to me, Richie Rich used to be fun because I used to imagine I had so much money. And we grew up very, very without money. So
me too.
Richie Rich was like some wild fantasy thing. But definitely Superman and Fantastic Four were my 2. It's funny because it's probably in my personal collection the 2 books I have the most of: Superman comics and Fantastic Fours.
Right on.
So and I've never gotten to write the Fantastic Four. I've gotten to ink it, but I've never gotten to write it. And Superman I've written, so one day Fantastic Four.
Well, that's what I was gonna ask you. One of the questions I always like asking people, and you and I are kind of deviating around, is like, even though your passion is more your own characters and everything, if you had like free reign with any title at any of the big 2 or whatever, what would yours be? Would it be Fantastic Four?
Yeah, it'd be Fantastic Four. I'd want to do a series called Fantastic Four 1966. So I would do stories that happen, like done in one stories that happened around when Galactus and Surfer and all that stuff came. For DC, I honestly, Darwyn Cooke and I pitched the Spectre to them. and they were not interested. You
Wow.
know, with Darwyn and I writing it and Darwyn drawing it, and they were not interested. And then
that's a miss on their part.
Yeah, and Amanda and I had a pitch with Power Girl, a Power Girl book with Super Pets, and they're not interested in that either. So, you know, so it's like you make the list of the things you want to do, and you run it by them, and they're like, "Nah, we don't need it. You know, it's not the right time," and all that kind of stuff. And then they tell you, "Here's what we want you to do," and so
then you try to find a way to shoehorn what you were wanting to do back in there.
Well, you know, I remember I was not too long ago, I was offered Doctor Strange at Marvel and to write Doctor Strange, and I passed. I said, I'm not a big fan of Doctor Strange, so give it to somebody else. And the editor was like, "You're the first person to ever pass on a thing." And I said, "Well, I don't want to spend a year of my life writing something I have no interest in.
100%.
It's not fair to the reader." You know, and so a lot of stuff I get offered, I'm like, I'm not the right guy, or I know a guy that's waiting his whole life to do that. Let me give you this person's name. I don't jump at every piece of work thrown my way. That said, if it's a weird thing, I kind of grab it real quick. I do like the under the radar characters because you can experiment more.
Totally.
And that's honestly what I did with Jonah Hex and Harley. It's like nobody cared.
I was going to ask
Harley, nobody cared.
That's a good question. Again, you're going right to some of the points that I wanted to ask you about, because really the first time that I was aware of you as a writer was Jonah Hex, you and Justin Gray.
Right.
And so I kind of had twofold question there. Is one, how did you end up in that gig? And number two, how did you and Justin link up? Because it seems like you guys have formed a good partnership and have continued to work together.
Well, Justin's an amazing writer and creative, and he has like that brain that just keeps working all the time. And Justin was an intern at Marvel Knights.
Oh, right on.
And he would pitch me a million ideas. One of them stuck out to me. I remember he said, it would be cool if Galactus ate a planet so big and like food comed for a while, you know, like his body had to absorb the planet. And in those million years, people landed on him and created cities.
That's badass.
So when Galactus woke up, he was full of city. I was like, okay, that's very Grant Morrison, very crazy stuff.
I dig it.
Yeah, and then when I left Marvel Knights, the minute I left Marvel Knights, I got a call from DC Wildstorm, and they said, "We'd like you to write some stuff for us," and that's where we pitched The Resistance and 21 Down, and those are the books we did. Again, not big sellers.
I guess I had actually been familiar with you as a writer then, because I did read 21 Down.
Yeah. And at the same time, I was doing a run on Deadpool. I did like 10 issues of Deadpool. I did the ones with the Punisher, you know, the ones where he met the Punisher the first time. And so I was doing all this. I was doing all
Hex
that
is the
stuff.
first one where it just hit me that you were writing it and that it was regular, because Hex hit me, man. I love
it. No, that wasn't. So what happened with Jonah Hex is I pitched, the end of the O was up at DC, and I pitched, Justin and I pitched Jonah Hex. We pitched it, done in one, different artist every issue. Okay.
Awesome idea.
So we can constantly be on time with the book. They said to us, we can't give you that because Brian Azzarello said he might want to do Jonah Hex.
Right.
So we're holding the title for him. I'm like, okay. He's a big star. I'm not, you know, like the guy, you know, whatever, start now. So what happened was Brian went up to DC and said, you know, I'm going to do Loveless, my own Western. And you guys, I'm not interested in Hex. Dan DiDio called me up and he says, well, listen, you know, Brian just passed on Hex. Why don't you get me a pitch? And I said, it's in your email already. I just sent it as I was talking to him. I had it waiting.
I love it.
And he said, how's it going to work? And I said, look, we're going to write it ahead of time. They're going to be done in ones. And he said, well, I'd like to have an artist for the first couple of issues, which was Luke Ross. You know, he says, I want a steady artist for the first couple. After that, you do what you want. Like, okay.
Kind of establish a tone or whatever.
So, yeah, so we did that, and we started writing in advance, and then we hooked up with Jordy Bernay. We hooked up with all these guys. Like, I just started walking around to people in San Diego Con and say, you want to do an issue with Jonah Hex? Okay, I'll sign you up. You want one? Can you do it? You have to do it in 6 months. And I got
Thank you for that. Yeah,
and I got guys like Riso and Darwyn Cooke and Dick Giordano. I remember Dick Giordano. He was doing a signing in Florida, And I went by and met him and said hi. And, you know, we talked about Jonah Hex. He loved the comic. And he said, I'd love to do an issue. And I knew he was sick. I know he was not doing well. And so I went home and called Justin, and we wrote an issue in like a day and a half. And we got it out to Dick right away, and Dick finished it.
Wow.
It came out. He did a signing, and then he passed away like a week or two later. And the same thing with Tony.
So cool.
Tony DeZugno. Tony, I would see at the shows all the time. And I pitched a graphic novel for Tony, and Justin and I pitched it, and Tony got the gig, and he finished it, and it came out, and he was happy as a clam, and then he passed away like not too long after. I don't know if Jonah. I think that they were just so happy to draw Jonah Hex at that point,
right?
Especially Tony, because Tony co-created the character.
Totally, I was so happy when I saw that, man.
Yeah, and you know, and some of my favorite issues were done by my best buddy, Darwyn Cooke. Darwyn did, you know, one about, we actually wrote for him about Canadian Mounties and wolves. We wrote that for him. And then we were out drinking, and I pitched issue 50, the idea we had for issue 50, and he says, I'm drawing that. And he said, nobody else is drawing that. And then when we were ending the series, I pitched him, I said, look, here's how I'm going to end the book. And he's like, I'm drawing that. So we got 3 Darwyn Cooke books, and he could have done any comic he wanted and made a ton of money. But he did our 3 books and made nothing.
That's wild. And he
was happy to do them, though. He enjoyed doing them. So
Darwyn was one of those artists too. That he's one of those guys that you can look at almost anything that he that's been drawn, and it's sequential or just a poster, a print, fun stuff to look at, man.
Darwyn did a month of covers. Do you remember the month of covers for DC? And honestly, if I was DC Comics, I would model my whole business after those 52 covers. He did.
It was strong
because they had the joy of the characters in them. You know, Darwyn was amazing. He's an amazing guy. I mean, he was a close friend of mine, right? So I saw him in a whole different level, but he was, what an amazing artist, and he loved these characters, and he hated when people messed with them. You know, when you took the joy out of the character, he was kind of bummed. You know, and but anyway, that Hex run, yeah, we went as far as we went, and then they started the new 52, and I said, I said, are we canceled? And he says, no, actually, Dan DiDio said, how about you do something where it's like Sherlock Holmes type of thing, and you put Jonah into Gotham. And I was like, with Dr. Arkham, and I said, yeah, we could do that, you know. And we did that, and that series, Dan kept saying, it's going to get canceled any issue. You need to give me something crazy. It's going to get canceled in 2 issues. It was almost canceled like 8 times. And that's why we started time traveling. We put Booster Gold in it. We had Superman. We had some crazy time thing going back and forth. That said, it forced us to do comics like when I was a kid. It forced us to do these wild, anything goes type character
big
study.
Ideas, right?
Yeah. And then with the last issue of All Star Western, I got to do the Justin. I got to do the dissect the death of Jonah Hex from the old annual, and we dissected and rewrote it, and then gave him a happy ending because we wanted him and Tallulah to kind of, you know, have a life. It makes no sense killing a character in a comic. I think they should just go on, have more adventures. And if they came back and said, would you write Jonah Hex and Tallulah Black as pirates? I would be like, yes, I could do that.
Well, man, for me, it's like when the movie came out for Jonah Hex, I had big hopes that I was kind of like, I hope they lean in and really go the way of what's been established now in these comics with Jimmy and Justin. And it's not that I was disappointed in the movie for that reason. There's other reasons to be. It had potential, you know, and it just felt like it didn't land.
The Warner Brothers and the people in charge did not involve us at all. And they had, and we offered. At one point, there was a guy that used to work at Warner Brothers. They said, look, I will come on as consultant, whatever. Justin and I will be on the set. We'll help you out. And I said, your screenplay, you know, they gave me the screenplay to read, and it was I just thought it was a disaster. And I was like, this is a mess. And he was like, no, we don't need you. We know what we're doing. And, you know, one of the producers on it was an old friend of mine, and he actually brought us out to the set, not DC.
Oh wow!
And
wow.
yeah, and we got to meet Josh and John Malkovich. We had lunch with John and Josh, and
yeah, the talent they had involved was undeniable.
Well, that was how messed up it was, right? Because you have all that, Michael Fassbinder, and you got all these great people. But what happened was the script became like everybody put their 2 cents in, and it had major problems. It's funny because when we were on set, the art director was using our covers for art direction and everything. Like there was a lot of our stuff referenced, but they wanted nothing to do with us. And at one point, when I was given the screenplay, I said, the protagonist is not well defined. This doesn't work, and that doesn't work. He's also a tracker, so there's no reason he has to dig up a dead body to find out where somebody went. I said, as a matter of fact, he doesn't have superpowers.
Right.
What the hell is that? And they're like, and this guy was like, well, nobody's going to buy a Western without superpowers these days. And then True Grit came out a month later, by the way, and was a big hit. So
amazing.
So they did everything like backwards. Now, Josh Brolin was great in it. Josh was great. I had no problem. Megan was good. Malkovich was fine. It was just didn't know what it wanted to do. There's some fun stuff in it. Like I'd like to re-edit it into a half-hour movie.
100%. Yeah, right.
And I think we got a classic there. But it wasn't. It was what it was. And then they went back and did reshoots. You know that they did some reshoots.
Yeah.
And
never a good sign.
I will give credit. They did name. They did have a line in the movie where Megan Fox says, "My real name's Tallulah Black." They added that line so Justin and I can get a check.
Really?
Yeah, that was very cool.
That's awesome.
The people involved were really nice. It was just bad decisions, and them trying to second guess the audience. And I kept saying, it's a Western. Just follow the Western rules. Don't again that the fact that Jonah can't track someone when that's all he does.
yeah.
Was a problem. And then shooting fireballs into a town. Why do we have to kill millions of people? If you make it a small, intimate story, people will really be there. If it's as long as it's interesting and the characters are developed. True Grit was a perfect example. They didn't have to blow up towns with fireballs or sink submarines. And I'm not a fan of that. There's a term for it where the diesel.
Steampunk.
Yeah, steampunk didn't belong in that movie.
Yeah.
It belongs in a steampunk movie. Jonah Hex is not a steampunk character.
It goes back to what you were saying. They really didn't know what to do. It's like they kind of, and you could tell the producers that were on it, like who don't know anything about comics and stuff. They're like, well, it's got superheroes, and we put the steampunks in there. And
I think some of the producers knew, some didn't.
Right.
It's not just one person. When you make a movie like that, it's like hundreds of people have to okay things. The director did the best he could, and he did some beautiful stuff. The producers did some beautiful stuff. The actors did some beautiful stuff, but it didn't come together. Yeah. And it's definitely like I've had it thrown back at me like nobody's going to touch Jonah Hex for years, and I just said, hey, HBO Max, take my done in one stories and make 1 hour episodes. I'll watch that. People will watch that all day long.
100%.
Literally just adapt each comic into a 1 hour episode. I don't care if I'm not involved. Just take it, get a screenplay. It's such a no-brainer. And then they can introduce Tallulah Black, and then they can spin off Tallulah. It's so there. It's but what do you do? Like after a while, I'm just like I watched yesterday I was watching a lot of this stuff being announced, and I'm just like, nah, it's too bad there's no Jonah Hex, there's no, but I don't own these characters. I just put my heart into them for 5 years. So I take my heart out and put it back in me and work on something else.
I love your idea for the what done in one. And I'm personally an independent filmmaker, and so could never do anything more than like a fan film. But right. I'm actually, when I get off today, I'm going to talk to a few people about maybe taking one of the old issues of Jonah Hex, adapting it as a fan film, and sending it to you.
People will watch it. As a fan film, they'll love it. As long as you got some guy. Here's the thing: you don't need all the big scar, right? A scar is fine, but you don't need the hanging skin and all that. I know people are so literal with it, but remember I did the issue where he got plastic surgery because the first thing Superman said is like, "What's with your face?" And he goes, "Let's fix that. Like, we can fix that."
You're scaring the shit out of people. You know that, right?
Oh, it's hard to eat a sandwich with it coming out. But you invest your time with characters, and then you have to move on, and that's what my career has been about: investing, changing, doing my take on it, and then moving on. And somebody else does theirs. Somebody else will write a Jonah Hex book after me, and they'll do whatever they want.
And they'll borrow the parts that they like, and they'll dismiss the parts they don't. Okay. And same thing on down the road.
My stuff is still out there somewhere.
Absolutely. And how do you feel like when you look at your career, like inking versus writing? And I'm gonna leave the business as its own thing, but writing and inking, you came into the business as an inker, but clearly with big ideas. Do you right now? Do you ever miss the idea, or do you do much inking? Do you ever sit down and want to draw?
I just did a 5-page. I inked a 5-page thing. By the way, the first time I inked anything in 10 years.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah, I inked a 5-page thing for. I'm not allowed to say, but it will be a book coming out. It'll be a book coming out soon, and they just announced it yesterday. One of the books.
Right on.
My name wasn't there.
Right on.
I did it as a favor. They needed some stuff, and I was like, yeah, I could do that. I don't prefer inking because
it's laborious, right? I mean, writing
laborious.
Both laborious, but
I think the pencilers are their best inkers on things. I love like a guy like Klaus Janson. Like when he does it, okay, everything's great. There's like guys I like. But for the most part, most artists I know ink themselves, and that's okay. You have to these days because the pay is not that great. So an artist needs all the money they can get.
And do you think digital, like the digital development, is helping with that? Because
the digital inks helps too. I mean, you scan it. You don't see the chops you see in the old. Like you look at 70s comics, especially the inking stuff, the Dick Giordano's and Klaus and Al Williamson and Tom Palmer, like these are real artists. Like these guys knew how to use brushes and pens, and nobody now is anywhere near those. Kevin Nolan, you look at stuff, anything Kevin Nolan touches. These guys were real artists, and it was a real skill. So what we see is what we see, but it's sort of like a skill gone by, kind of back there. I think there's some good ones now, but I think, like I said, I don't think it's the greatest job in comics right now. I'd rather color, I think.
Oh, right. Yeah. It's funny because I was thinking, as I was looking at the credits and wanted to talk to you, and we're going to circle back around to Pop Kill and to your Kickstarter as well.
Sure.
But with that, I made sure that I did not just get the names down, for you and Dave and for Juan Santa Cruz. I made sure that I also was going to acknowledge, Brian Reber and Knott as well, because I, as a creator myself, I know that everybody on these things really bust their ass, and they deserve the credit that they get. And I like.
They have such a great team of guys, and John J. Hill designing everything and putting it all together. I kind of try to stick with the people that I work with because they know what to expect. I try to spoil them as best I can. I live with Amanda, and I know what an artist goes through. So I pay my guys the next day. I don't give the 30 days or 60 days because I know they got families and everything. It's a tough business. The toughest part of the business is watching these all the celebrities and stars talk about the movies and not acknowledging the comic people.
That's weird.
And by the way, they make more in a day than we make in a year. So
totally,
it's kind of tough watching that sometimes. I'll give credit to like people like Margot Robbie and Kathy Ann and all these. They actually talk about the comics and have the comics with them, but most of them don't.
It seems like the biggest disappointment I heard in DC's fandom yesterday, because a lot of excitement around it, and from people like comic fans and stuff that were really excited, but it seems like the biggest overwhelming across the board disappointment was just what you said, is that they made all these really big announcements, but they kind of almost acted like the comics didn't exist,
Well, I mean, to them, they kind of, if you look at the money they're getting and how they do their business, the comics are just the beginning of their property, their licensing. It helps their licensing. I kind of get it. I mean, they did announce Milestone, and they did announce, new Batman, Batwing, Luke Fox being a new Batman, which I'm very happy about because Justin and I created Luke. But, I never expected them to talk about comics much because, let's be honest, they're trying to get a world worth of people. you know, you can talk about comics all day, but you put that Batman trailer or the Suicide Squad trailer on and everything's gone, you know, like all, you know, I'd rather watch James Gunn talk about Suicide Squad for 20 minutes, you know, in a way, you know, it's just, it's interesting. As our characters get bigger, it doesn't mean our business gets bigger.
No, and I'd seen a creator recently. It was on Facebook or on Twitter, and it was somebody well known in your kind of echelon of the business who made a very, I thought, very salient point, and that is they should treat comics totally differently than they do now. With the success of the movies versus the comics, as you were saying, financially, just forget making money from the comics. Use them as a test lab. You know what I mean? Forget the profitability and throw a million ideas against the wall again.
They do in a way, but you got to remember these companies are, you know, how many Batman Joker stories are you going to tell? Right. Obviously 10 billion more. Right. It's the same stuff over and over. I mean, it's a loop, you know, whether it's one Joker or three Jokers. Right. Whether it's, hey, you know, here's Harley, let's create another character like Harley. It's the same thinking all the time. Right. So for me, it's boring. Like, honestly, I feel like I've read it all. I've seen it all. After Mazzucchelli and Frank Miller did Batman, it was kind of hard for me to look at anything else, you know? You know, we have these certain books that, and you know, people love Batman, so they want the same thing over and over. They don't want controversial. They don't want change.
I bitch about it, and then I go buy Batman. I mean, that's
right. And then I go buy Batman, or if you know, the X-Men, I go buy X-Men, or Spider-Man. You know, I think it's up to the companies to experiment a little more, but they don't really want to be that generous with sharing.
That's the thing.
And that'll keep them in a bad spot. That'll keep them. Why bother when they could make $10 million licensing Batman images?
Yeah, it's a whole.
Why bother? You know, so there's a lot of that going on. I think Dan DiDio, when we had Dan up there, you know, he experimented a lot and he tried new things. I think now it's going to be interesting. At least, you know, Milestone is a good thing to hear.
I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. So, you know, we'll see. It's corporate comics, right? Corporate comics. Nothing changes with corporate comics.
And their goal is to live.
It was 10 years ago.
That's right. Their goal is to live. You know, it's like a corporation is a creature. Exactly. And there's something to be said about the laziness of greed, but that's a whole other show for us to do sometime, you know?
Right.
As far as that goes. And instead, you know, when we're talking about like, it's those polar opposites, because that's what I love. I started this talking about that finally, and maybe most importantly was paper films to me when I think about you these days.
Right.
And to me, that's why, because I like and I'm exploring more and more. I've been digging into your guys' website, in fact, and I'm loving it because of the fact that the variety, it goes back to that, Jimmy, and that you guys are what I was talking about, like a test lab. I see a lot of madness, just craziness, and the boiling brains of the ideas that are coming out of paper films. For instance, on Pop Kill. Pop Kill's over the top. It's insane, the story that we've got. If somebody asked me to write the log line for you guys, I'm trying to think what I'd said, but it was something about
wait till you read the third issue, because that's the one where it's like, what? It's the origin of the two brothers. It's pretty funny.
That's what I was gonna say. That's right there is just enough. If you give people even little hints about that, it's so crazy.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm trying to write the comic for guys like you and guys like me, like adults, right? It could be sex, there could be violence, it could be unexpected turns, but at the end of the day, we have to care about the characters, right? And that's the core of everything I'm doing. Believe me, I have a book I've been working on, and it's 60-something pages, and I had it lettered and everything, and I'm reading it, and I'm like, it's not there yet. You know, and I'm sitting there and I did a prologue and I did an epilogue and I did it, and I'm like, still not there yet. Like there's something missing, and I rewrite and I go, you know, and it's so funny because I thought the initial idea was great, and I realized that it took me too long to get to the idea in the story. So now I need to do like a flash forward and a flashback, and it's just like I said, it's art, right? So it's interpretation. It's not everybody's going to like what I do. You know, I had another pro ask me why my Kickstarters don't make the crazy money other Kickstarters make. And I tell them all the time, I said, I haven't done superhero books. And I said, plus I'm not a collectible guy, so I'm not offering 14 covers with pins and stuff. You know, and I said, go back and look at those campaigns. They're all about getting a silver ink and a color ink. And I said, I sell it to people that want to read it. My audience is around 1,000 people, and they will spend an average of $20 to $30. That's my average, right? So I know that's my audience. So, you know, I said, I'm never going to have the 150,000, whatever, until I do a Kickstarter where Amanda writes and draws the book. Then we're going to see something different.
And there's seeds being planted if you almost look at it.
Well, it's going to be an artist. When it's artist driven, it always does a little better. And these are writer driven, you know, with artwork. I mean, it's me going out and grabbing the steering wheel and saying, look, there's an idea we have. Let's put it together. Right now, I'm working on 3 different books for future Kickstarters. I have a Sex and Violence Volume 3 coming. And that has like 15 people on it doing stuff. You know, and I know that will do well because the title alone. I think I sell more digital of that book than any book I've ever done.
Oh, right on. Just because of the Sex and Violence, huh? Okay.
Yeah. And Painkiller Jane was another one. Like, we had a great audience on it. And I delivered a hardcover book that I'm extremely proud of. I think I have one right. I was looking at it yesterday.
Cool.
And laughing that I was laughing because I realized I put the gray paper insets. I was looking at the production. I'm like, no wonder why this cost me a fortune. I'm like, this book will last 400 years. It's and I had it stitched, not glue, you know, because I like to stitch. Because when it's glue, it breaks sometimes, and I want people to be able to flip through the book. But I was laughing. I'm going, okay, this is why I didn't make much money on this one. But boy, I'm proud of the book. You know, I'm like, okay, this is really nice. But it was probably, that was the hardest working one for us because the books weighed like 1 billion pounds.
Right. And do you do all your own fulfillment?
Yeah. So I have an office inside a comic shop in Clearwater, Florida, called Emerald City Comics, and they have a lift that, you know, to truck and back it up. And then we bring everything into my office, and my buddy Patrick and I, we pack every package. It takes us around 3 weeks to do each Kickstarter, and we make the stamps. We make we bag all the books. We put the backing board, the certificates of authenticity inside them. We check them, and then we addresses. We pack them. We drop them off. Post office comes, or we drop them off. And then we handle for the next month fulfillment. We make sure everybody got their book, and, you know, people write us when they don't get it, and then we track and we do everything. Well, it's Kickstarters are not for the weak.
No, not at all.
I don't make a lot of money on them, and the money I do make, I pay my next guys. So, you know, I've not made profit on them for me. But that's what my regular work is for, right?
Okay. And that breaks my heart a little bit, because I was going to say, it seems like to me, I'm inspired by your Kickstarters, you know, regardless of what other people say. I feel like you got your finger on the pulse, because so many people overshoot and they do Kickstarters that are impossible. And I feel like you are finding your sweet spot. And
I'm making money. I'm just deciding that my money is going back into future books. I am making it. My choice is to spend them on next projects.
Well, I love that, and that you're paying your creators, like you said, because that's me as well. When people work with me, I want them.
They're all paid. If we make profit, I give them a bonus if there's any profit, you know, past what's promised. But I ask them their rate. I pay them their rate, you know, that they want, or I tell them, I said, this is the most I can pay you, and they have the choice, you know. But, you know, it's why I use a lot of the same people. And Amanda, I always, you know, I blackmail her into doing covers all the time. But Juan Santa Cruz, I use him as much as I can because I love his work.
Okay, so that was one of the questions I was going to ask you. Like, I know Dave Johnson from other stuff ever since Super Patriot back at Image, which is when I fell in love with his art. But how did you link up with Dave, and how did you link up with Juan Santa Cruz? Because Juan definitely seems like a find.
So Juan is the first time I worked with Juan was the Resistance for Wildstorm.
Oh, really? All the way back?
Yeah, it was 2001.
Okay.
And we worked on that for 8 issues, and then after that, we did a book called The Twilight Experiment, and we worked on that for 6 issues.
Okay.
And I worked with him ever since. I mean, so we've been working together. He doesn't speak English. Like, I met him, he doesn't speak English. He's in Spain. Yeah, he lives in Spain. But we have it translated. David Macho is like his art rep, and Dave translates. And I try to keep him as busy as I can.
He's got beautiful stuff, and
more.
And his eye is great. You know, I don't know how much of it is you guys all talking about how to set the shots up.
He's done stuff for Marvel. He did Fantastic Four. He's done other books for Marvel and DC. But they don't consider him like a big name, which is a big mistake on their part.
And it's your boon at this point. It's like your boon to enjoy, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I wish I could make them all more money. You know, I wish I could.
You sound a lot like me, man.
Sell some product and I was able to give a little, like, Random Acts of Violence. I was able to give Giancarlo some extra money because they made a movie out of it, you know. But it's the page rate. But he's a guy I go back to because I just think he has a great storytelling eye, and there's not a lazy bone in his body.
Hey, stay on Giancarlo for a second and Random Acts of Violence, because that was another thing I was going to ask you about.
Sure.
Have you gotten to see the movie yet?
Yeah. I saw the movie. Well, I saw the movie before it came out. It came out at drive-ins. It played in drive-ins because of COVID. But I got to see the movie, and I did a bunch of interviews with Jay Baruchel, and I was on the set. You know, I was a producer on it. Justin's a producer on it. And Amanda and I went visit the set in Toronto, and it is a slasher film. It is a thinking man slasher film. It's not for everybody. It's a little different than the book, but it still has the same ideas of the book. I'm happy with it. Jay's been nothing but a sweetheart. He's been great. You know?
I'll let our viewers know right now. It's available on Shudder, right?
Yeah,
the streaming service Shudder.
It's actually even free. If you want to join Shudder for a month, it's free. You can watch the movie, and then you can go, hey, you know what? You decide whether you want to stay or not.
Well, I'm getting ready to watch it, and I'll add the link, and I'll make sure that the viewers have that opportunity.
Yeah, it's definitely violent, though, I will say.
How did the project develop from comic to getting into Jay Baruchel's hands?
So we did the comic for Image Comics. Justin and I had an idea, but we didn't have money to make it. And we went with this company called Kickstart. Not Kickstarter, but there's a company, Kickstart. And they said if they can own a piece of it, they'll pay the crew to do it. So they own a piece of it. They were credited on the film. And we put the book out. And then Jay Baruchel called and just said, I really love this book. I'd like to buy the rights to do it. That was 10 years ago, right?
Wow. That's how it works, man. Yeah, right.
And it, you know, it's an indie film. I mean, it costs $3 million budget, you know. Although he has stars in it. He has some name actors. But what happened was, he did it. He did a first draft. He sent it to me. I gave him some notes on the first draft. He did a second draft, which was much better. And then it paused for a while, and then they renewed the development deal. And finally, like a year and a half ago, you know, they got the money, and he finally got to do it. And I flew up for a couple of days and, you know, visited the set and, you know, had a great time. And then it happened, you know, and it's not a big film. I'm not making much money on it. I actually, because the book's out of print, we printed 400 copies, like just exclusive for it. And I put an interview with me and Jay in the back, and you know, some extras, and we just sell them on the Paper Films website. But we've been selling them all week, so people are buying them because I think it's like $10 or $11 or something.
Available now.
Yeah, available right now. Yeah,
I'm gonna buy one.
Yeah, and so we only printed 400. We figured if people want it, we have it, but we didn't. It's not a big release movie, so to put it out again, it wouldn't get ordered. You know, we know it's a limited audience. But
I'm going to share the link. I'm going to do my part to help push a couple copies. I'm going to buy one, and I'm going to help push a couple copies too.
Thank you. And we're really happy. You know, look, we're really happy we were able to. I found a printer down here in Florida that said I can print 400, and I said, yeah, but I want it
my
square
quality,
bound.
right?
I want it square bound.
I got you.
He's like, okay, that's a little more. And I said, I also want to add another 10 pages. And he's like, okay, so you want to do a trade? And I said, well, it's not really a full-blown trade, but I think it's a 64-page comic, right? So, but anyway, so I'm really happy. I mean, I'm happy with it. You know, I did a roundtable interview, me and Jay on Zoom with like 10 reporters. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, cool.
Jay's been very generous mentioning me and Justin in his interviews, which is really cool. He's not like a lot of other Hollywood people. He definitely understands what it is to fight for your idea and to get it out there. He tells me I'm super generous all the time. He says, "You're so nice and I said, "Well,
you seem like it, man."
I said, "Buddy, I said your film is your film. My book is my book. None of those change. It's all good." You know.
Well, you're I don't know, man. There's people around the world that are good and bad, and you do seem to emanate goodness. And just take that at its face value, man.
I try.
Because I don't want to keep you all day. You're married. You're working on stuff, dude.
But she's sleeping. She pulled an all-nighter. Man, I have to wake her up at 2:00.
What's she working on right now?
She's working on Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey number 4.
Gotcha.
Yeah, number 4. Yeah.
So before we do get off, I want to circle back around to Kickstarter, or to the Kickstarter for Popkill one more time. And first of all, I wanted to ask you about Dave. And how did you guys link up on the writing on this book? Because like I said, I love his art.
Yeah.
And I love the big ideas here. And I was wondering, how did you guys link up? And can you tell me, are there any parts of the book that I've read in part 1 that are distinctly Dave or distinctly Jimmy? Like, for instance, the line, "Your insincerity makes me puke," made me laugh out loud.
I wish I could tell you who wrote that, but I don't, because we both wrote the book, right?
Okay.
And it's funny because every once in a while I'll read an old comic I did and go, "Oh, I wrote that? That's pretty good, actually." You know,
Yeah.
Or that's terrible.
Right.
So with this, Dave is a close friend of mine.
Mm-hmm.
And he's always wanted to write, always wants to write. And he said, "I have this idea about competing soda companies." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Well, one has a thing." And I'm like, "It could be interesting." I said, why do we care?" And he's like, "Okay."
Good.
And that's when we started blowing up. You know, there's a rule with every character in a comic. What do they want?
Mm-hmm.
And what do they fear?
Right.
If you can answer these 2 things, you have a pretty solid grasp of your character. And he pitched it to me, and I said, I said, "I think we can do something with this if we, make it fun. Like, it's gotta be like over the top fun, and
Gonzo.
It could be mean, it could be sexy, but it's got to be some kind of funness to it." And we were looking at like the Getaway movie from not Getaway, well, like the Getaway, but more like the one the
Italian Job.
The Italian Job, but less than that. We're actually looking at the Steve McQueen and Faye Dunaway where they steal the art. That movie.
Gone in 60 Seconds.
No, old movie, like 1960s. Steve McQueen, Faye Dunaway. They remade it with Pierce Bronson.
Thomas Crown Affair.
Thomas Crown Affair. So I was saying, if I can have some of Thomas Crown Affair in there, with the main spy and the girl and Dina, I think we can have some fun with this. And I said, but we're gonna have to dissect the brothers because, separated, conjoined twins separated that now hate each other is fun. So we explore that in the 3rd issue. But it basically it's just a romp type of story. The joy in it is sort of like in the dialogue.
Your insincerity makes me puke.
Yes. It's like they we know this guy because this guy's in every comic and in every movie.
Right.
But we're gonna throw this guy around a little bit, toss him around a little bit. It's funny because I had another thing I was working on with John Singleton that I want to develop.
Cool.
And John passed away. We didn't get a chance to do it. And I'm thinking, I probably should revisit it and just dedicate it to John at this point.
That would be really,
because
really
I don't
cool.
want to lose that story because I felt like he and I worked on it. And it's a little bit like this one, not with soda though. It has to do with spies and all that kind of stuff.
I gotcha.
But so Dave came to me. He said, "What do you think about doing it as a Kickstarter?" And as we started breaking it down, I realized it's 4 issues. And not 4 20-page issues, 4 34-page issues. So it was like 148 pages plus,
on, man.
right?
Right on.
And I was like, okay, that's going to cost a fortune. And I said, we can do it as a trade book. Like we'll do it as one big trade book.
Right.
And I did the math on it. I said, there's no way we're going to be able to get people to buy it. I said, not for what we have to charge. If we did a hardcover, I wouldn't be able to raise the money. It would have been more than I've asked for out of any other Kickstarter.
Gotcha.
But the premise is not one that people are going to run to Kickstarter for initially, right? Unless they see it.
They need a taste.
I mean, if it was called Sex and Violence, I would have sold it like that, right? Yeah. Because it was called Pop Kill, it's like kind of a different thing. And again, there's nudity in it. There's violence and language. So again, we limit our audience to adults, right?
Yeah.
Somebody complained to me. They said, when are you going to do a kid's book? And I said, well, besides the fact there's 8 million of them you can go out and buy tomorrow. I said, we did do one called Forager that was for kids. But I said, I'm not the guy. Don't come to me looking for kid material. I'm not the guy, you know? I said, there's so much of that. Why do people always want what you can't deliver them? You know?
Yeah, I get stuff a lot when I'm doing like online live stream stuff, and people tell me things like, they'll be like, man, it's not safe for kids to watch your show. And I'm like, I hope they're not.
Yeah. Put those kids in the other room for a while. It's okay.
Right.
They'll be fine.
So with that Kickstarter, you guys right now are just like inches away from 50,000, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I haven't looked at it today, but I think it's around there.
I did this morning, and it was real close, you know, and I want you guys to hit 80,000, and you've only got like 5 days left. So we need people to get busy, get out there and support it.
I don't know how I've been promoting it. And, you know, there's only even the press is like, there's only so much they want to push it because it doesn't really make them anything. And you know, it's funny. It's tough because I think I got my regular customers, you know, and I see every name that comes across it. Like I see every backer. So I noticed half my friends backed it, half of my friends didn't. Right. You know?
That's painful, man. I know the feeling.
Yeah. And I'm a backer, meaning I back other people's stuff. Yeah. You know, if I don't retweet them or promote it, I back it as well. Right.
Right.
But I don't expect the same from everybody. Just because I back theirs, I don't expect them to back mine. That's not how the world works.
No.
Sadly.
It's sad. Yeah, totally.
But you know, I like to lead by example. That's all I can do.
So I will promote the heck out of it, man, and help you guys. And even if it just gets 1 or 2 more people in there, that's worth it to me to know that the time we spent today got them in there.
I agree. You know, I'm not a greedy person. I'd love to hit the 50K to get everybody the book. So, and I think we will within a week. We'll hit the 50K. So I'm happy about that. You know, right now my whole mission is now I have to go and get printing set up and get the inside set up because we have to add a sketchbook and. You know, so there's production that needs to be done in the next week. And then I want to get it out quick. Thank God the post office might be moving quicker these days. So,
and
you know.
Another thing I can say positive is after I supported the first book, it did arrive very quickly. And so for people that are on the fence and thinking about, do they want to support this? The quality of the book is great. It arrives on time, and it looks like there's a plan. Like you told me it's going to be 4 issues and stuff.
Yes, we're on the 4th issue. You know, it's very important for me to deliver the book on time because people don't want to wait.
No, you lived through the Image days, man. You were there for that, you know?
Yeah. And well, you know, I mean, there's other Kickstarters I still haven't gotten their books, and it's a year and a half. There's one that's 4 years old that I keep getting a note saying, you know, we're working on it. And I'm just like, you know, if you broke both my arms, I would have got it done quicker.
Wow.
You know, I would have put the pen in my mouth. I would have do that thing in 4 years. I would have nailed it. I think a lot of people get into Kickstarter thinking they're going to do this and then realizing, oh my God, I keep helping people with their Kickstarters, but I keep telling them it's not going to supplement your income. It's just going to get your stuff out there. So,
right.
You know,
it's exposure.
I'm trying to figure out a way to supplement my income. Then I don't have to do books for anybody else, you know?
Well, you're like me. You always want to turn around and pay people. So it's crazy, you know? It's like,
I do. I pay them in advance. I pay them when they finish their work. I don't wait for the Kickstarter to pay. I have the book done before the Kickstarter's over. It's the only way I can do business. I don't want to advertise something I don't have in my hands.
And like I said, you've been an inspiration to me. I've not run a lot of Kickstarters, but we're getting ready to do one, and it's.
Well, you can hit me up with. You have some advice. I have plenty of advice. If you need anything, let me know.
But you guys are super legit. You're super like on top of your stuff, and it impresses me, quite frankly.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it.
As we get off of here, I did want to ask you, and if you don't have time, and you can always just hang up on me at any point because I do ramble. But sure. Man, outside of comics, with the COVID and everything, real briefly, how have you been keeping yourself entertained? How have you and Amanda been keeping yourselves, sane during these crazy times?
So we work. I have my office is downstairs on the ground floor of my house. Mm-hmm. Hers is upstairs on the other side of the house.
Helps.
We visit each other for meals and relaxation. That's how our days go. I haven't been going out much other than the shop. Mm-hmm. The other day we went down to the beach and watched the SpaceX launch, so, we'll take a break. but nobody was on the beach other than surfers, so it was empty there. You know.
Have you guys been streaming anything that you really think is exciting and that you think people should check out? Is there anything that's been like Tiger King? You know?
We did watch Tiger King already, so that was great. But not too much because she's been super busy, and I've been doing other things. You know, I do work outside of comics, so
totally.
So I've been doing other projects, but it's weird being home so much. It's weird not going to conventions and seeing people, and I feel like the companies like DC and Marvel have changed because of all this, and I feel very detached from the comic book community on some level. Well, the cons are always great to connect and get re-energized. You know, people energize you, and you know, it's the COVID stuff has shown me a lot of people's true colors, and so I'm being very picky with what I do and who I spend time with, and you know, a lot of people are very strange people. There's like a lot of stuff going on, you know, and it's political. The world's political now, and you know, wildfires and global warming, and you know, and this president, and meanwhile people are more absorbed with, you know, seeing Batman trailer or Suicide. I get it, because the other stuff is just all tension stuff, and it's out of our control. We feel like it's out of our control. Right. Politics aren't. We can actually get behind them and make changes, but
I've been screaming at my friends for years to just get into local politics. Start putting some attention on your local politics, and man, you'll reshape the national politics.
And local politics, I can walk in and an open meeting and you know, say my peace of mind, and
it impacts your life directly every day.
It does, and so we're very, you know, locally we're very political involved. Cool. But I just a buddy of mine, David Mandel, who's a writer for Veep. And he used to write Seinfeld. Just did a chat with the It was about writing politics in TV, and all the money went to the Biden campaign. And it was a little expensive, but I was happy to support him. Money's going to a good place. So there's a lot of interesting things going on, but I feel like I just feel like we've got to stop. The vision of the United States sucks, and I get it. Trump loves the idea that, actually, Washington loves the idea that they keep us divided so we can't attack.
Man, this is an ancient idea, right? I mean, isn't this the oldest tactic? Like it's prehistoric, right? Yeah. If people in power keep those not in power at each other's throats, we never really spend the time to revolt or look up and say what assholes they are, you know?
Right, or change doesn't happen.
That's right. Keeping us pitted at each other keeps things ground to a halt.
Right. So the people that like Trump, and I'm that's their business, right? I don't, but they do. I know him since I was young. I went to his birthday party once. No shit. I actually met him, you know.
Wow.
My thing is, you know, that it's just that we do have to all work together for anything. COVID-19 would have been so much easier if somebody just said, wear a mask from this day on, and everyone did it. And
we'd be out of this right now. We would be out.
Absolutely. So
we're politicizing the wrong things for the wrong reasons, man.
Yeah, we just need to push back on the government and say, you know, mind your own business and let us, you know, like I said, there's a lot of chaos in the world. That's why comics are important.
And entertainment in general, escape is important. And
look, people were home for 6 months. They learned how much art is important in their lives, because without it, they would have lost their minds.
And I like the way that when you write, there is in your guys and even in Amanda's books, there's this idea of other ways of resolution, you know, that it's not always just the fight book, you know, it's not just the jump right to it kind of a thing. Yeah. And that's, I appreciate that.
Well, Amanda and I always say we have to earn a fight, meaning something really has to shut down.
It goes back to tension and jeopardy.
Right, because you can talk out most anything. I could not agree with somebody about politics, and we can talk, but there's no reason to fight. I mean, we both think we want what's best for us, right? Different perspectives is like looking at art. Nobody sees the painting the same, right? So, that's right. But we do in the comics. We always try to have the hero talk the villain out of something. We always do that. We can't help it.
Well, I think it's interesting when you can actually bake a lesson into writing, especially in stuff like comics, and it works when it's not heavy-handed. When it's within the story and you allow the characters to organically deliver things, not as a message, but as a story,
right.
and the lessons baked in there, it works, whereas if you try to heavy-handed, it might miss completely.
Well, with Harley, there's a lot of messages in there.
Mm-hmm.
And I find a lot of the people that write her completely miss that.
100% right.
They completely, because they say, well, you guys wrote it, it was very silly and out of control. And I said, yes, but it was also very in control. Mm-hmm. And it was not, Harley's not a schizophrenic. She's not, she doesn't have multiple personalities that, right. She knows exactly what she's doing all the time. And she chooses to go to this personality or that thing. Right. But it's her choice,
right?
And people write her like she flipped a switch, and I'm
more
just
schizophrenic,
schizophrenic, which is completely off character.
Yeah,
it's actually it weakens the character because she's if anything, our stories were about her controlling her life, mm-hmm. and if she chooses to kill someone, that's her choice. I don't want to take that away from her because that does not empower her. That weakens her. And it makes it more like, the Joker. You say, well, he's insane. That's why he kills. And I'm like, okay. But it's an excuse, Again, she's a complicated character. And people don't write her. People, when I see them writing a lot of Harley, it's always her saying something funny and then hitting somebody with the head with a hammer.
Yeah.
And I'm like, sure, we've done that in the book. But
try to give it some context.
but there's a lot more complicated things going on. Right. And that's the way we like comics. And Jonah Hex was the same way. There was mm-hmm. He never hurt a child. He never hurt an animal.
Right.
He had things that he wouldn't do.
A code.
He had a code. He wouldn't attack Indians. The only issue we had with an Indian was a crazy Indian guy that went crazy living on the rocks. But we never did the cowboy Indian thing mm-hmm. in all the books we did because it just wasn't realistic to the character or the time frame. It happened, And I'm definitely one that thinks that they have to give repercussions. The American Indians are probably the first ones online that need to be taken care of.
When we get off here, I am going to send you something. We're working on a project right now, and one of the things we're doing with the team that's involved is we're actually doing some work where we're going to contribute money to the Kumeyaay Indians, the natives here, in Southern California. And that's really important to us as well. But that's a whole other story. Like I said,
we went to the Sitting Bull Memorial, and we paid the extra money to go right up to the nose and go up to the deck. But I told my wife, we both agree with the money's going to the kids' schools. So please, here, take the money.
That's our thought.
Make us happy. Give us some thrill for an hour. And we love the idea that we gave the money to the school. That's great. There's a lot wrong in the world, and we can fix it little pieces at a time. And so that's why I stay positive about everything.
Well, man, this has been an absolute pleasure getting to know you because I've admired your work for decades now, and to actually get to know you a little bit better honestly, it was a pleasure. I wasn't kidding when I said earlier that I consider you a force of nature in the business because you are very singular in the way you operate, and I admire that.
Well, thanks,
and I think other people admire it, and people who haven't yet been exposed to you are going to admire it. And all I can do is my part and helping spread the word about Jimmy Palmiotti, about Paper Films, about Pop Kill. But before we go, do you want to say anything? Is there any other projects or your Instagram or your Facebook or websites, anything you want to aim people at?
Sure. So on Twitter, it's my name, Jay Palmiotti. Twitter, Instagram, have an account under my name. So does Amanda. So does Paper Films. We have a website, paperfilms.com. If you sign on to it, a little pop-up comes up, and you can join a mailer. It's great to do because we offer discounts and show artwork and stuff like that. We don't bombard your mail. It's like once a month. And I have coming up, we have a story in the Harley Quinn Black, White, and Red coming up in a couple of weeks. And then they just announced we did a story, and I can't remember the title of the book. Let me see if I wrote it down.
Yeah, please do, because I'll go through and pull out links for everything you've talked about.
It's called the Death Metal Multiverse #1.
Okay.
And it's me, Amanda, and Chad Hardin did a short story about the Super Pets.
Right
And
on.
And the other story is written by Patton Oswalt. I don't know who drew it.
Oh, super cool.
But Patton was sharing the writing chores in this book, so that's kind of a fun thing we got coming out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then and there's Pop Kill 2 ending soon, and 3 will be up. 3 and 4 will probably be up right after that. And if you have Shudder, check out Random Acts. There's a lot of things. I'm sitting there, I'm like, there's not much going on, but there's a lot of stuff going on.
And like I said, I'll package all this up so that we have links galore, and we make sure that people know exactly how to get to every single thing that you just told me.
Yeah, and that's it. And I mean, you know, we have Birds of Prey. Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey #3 comes out probably in like 3 weeks, and it's wonderful. And issue 4, if you miss Harley and Ivy, you'll get your fix in issue 4. Unless they censor it and tell us you can't do it. But it's already written. So hopefully they don't leave it alone, you know.
That's groovy, man. I really, really appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to it too. Stay in touch, man. And I will Absolutely. As well. And I'll definitely shoot you some stuff about our Kickstarter. As far as, you know, supporting it, that's not the thing. I just like getting stuff around.
Maybe I can help you. Before you send it out, let me look it over.
Okay.
Let me look it over. It's the least I can do for you.
Well, thank you, man. And if I can ever do anything else for you, answer any questions, provide any other support, please let me know, and I'll always be glad to do what I can to help you guys out.
Thanks, Bobby. I appreciate it, man. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you, Jimmy. Bye.
All right. Have a great day, okay?
Peace.
Okay.